who can come from anywhere else into the country. Obviously, the local traders will not be happy with it, and it will make the government unpopular. So as a result, when they get home, they change. You know, there's no commitment towards that. So I think going forward, it is extremely important we invest into a very robust army that would react to any security issue in any part of the continent.
Let's return to the issue of the protests, which have degenerated into violence and other acts of impunity. What really are the protesters asking for?
Well, first and foremost, they had a very strong stance. They wanted President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita to leave. You know, so at the point he tried all he could, including the holding of the legislative elections after the ECOWAS presidents intervened, including our very own President Nana Akufo-Addo. So, I mean, he tried, but still, they said they wanted him to leave. But now that he's been toppled, there's now two major sticking points between the protesters and the military junta.
Has he been toppled? Because there are those who believe that once it is unconstitutional and the ECOWAS has not yet endorsed whoever has taken over, he cannot be described as someone who has been toppled. What's the situation?
No, I think let's be realistic. He's no longer in charge. You know, it's the military that is in charge. And trust me, if we want to really deal with the situation in a much more effective and efficient manner, we have to accept the reality. We cannot pretend that he's still in charge when indeed he's not in charge. So rather, it is the military we have to be speaking with. And I understand we have representatives of the junta coming for these talks. And there are two major sticking points. One, initially the military said they would rule for 2 years. After that, they would hand over to a civilian authority. But you know, the ECOWAS heads of states and government said, no, we don't want it that way. We want you to go for a year. And even the opposition, which led the demonstration, said we don't want it that way. So later they said, okay, it's going to be 18 months. All right. So now the major point is the time, how long they're going to rule, and secondly, who is going to be the head of government? Because the military wants their own, but the civilians also claim, no, we have to be in power, all right? And ECOWAS is also on the side of the civilians because they think, no, the right way to go is for a civilian authority to take over, all right? But currently what is happening is the military is actually appointing a group, an authority of some sort to elect who is going to be the next president for the transitional period, which is also not going down well with ECOWAS. It's not going down well with the opposition. So I'm pretty sure these talks would be aimed at, breaking the impasse.
That's right. Is it possible that these talks could also be looking at restoring Keita back to his position until such a time that proper elections are held to decide whether he stays or he leaves?
Absolutely not. Like I said, we need to be realistic. It's not feasible at all. Aside the fact that he's become so unpopular with the military, which I must say is quite powerful in Malian society, he's also very unpopular with a lot of the people in Mali. So it is not going to work that way. Rather, our focus should be aimed at one, giving power to civilian authority, and secondly, shortening the time.
We're just seeing the arrival of some of the heads of states of member ECOWAS countries. We're expecting already in the country is the president of Guinea, Mr. Alpha Condé. Who is this?
Is that for?
Who is that? And the Togolese president has just arrived. Nyashimbe has just arrived. Togo is one of the countries that borders Ghana, and he himself has had some issues in the past, but he's here to attend this meeting, which will be hosted by Ghana's president, who is currently the chairman of the ECOWAS. Will currently take the national anthem of Togo.
Foreigners. Who has been in power for close to half a century.
Wow. Okay, we'll have to talk about that. And that was the national anthem. National anthems of Ghana and Togo played a while ago to welcome the Togolese president, Mr. Faure Gnassingbé, who has been president of Togo since 2005. Indeed, he succeeded his father Gnassingbé Eyadema at the time, and together they've ruled for that country for how long?
Close to half a century.
For close to 50 years, they have been in power. He succeeded his father, and so these are some of the issues that probably lead to some of the situations in these countries. But he's here to also take part in the talks to restore sanity to Mali, a country that has been troubled politically. The military is in charge as we speak, but ECOWAS trying to resolve the issue and to see how quickly they can restore civilian power to that country.
Exactly. You see, Togo is another very interesting case. I mean, in recent times we have protests, and there's been a military crackdown of those protests. I mean, it largely remains an ethnic country where a particular ethnic group, or ethnic groups feel they are not part of the development process, and one ethnic group is taking precedence over everything, and that has been a major challenge. But Abdul, I'm particularly interested in Togo because they are our next door neighbor.
No, right.
I mean, we're almost a single country, because you have certain persons within the Volta enclave living in Ghana but working in Togo, and vice versa. So there's the likelihood that anything that happens in Togo would have dire implications to Ghana, because over the years, conflict, crime has become transnationalized. So whatever happens within a single country has the potential of spilling over into another country, like it happened with the civil war in 2011 in Ivory Coast, where we had mercenaries from Liberia going into Ivory Coast, and we had similar cases with the Sierra Leonean conflicts and all that. So it is. I personally, have Togo at heart, and I think whatever it has to take us, especially within the West African sub-region, to ensure that there's sanity in Togo, we have to do it. That is why Ghana has been extremely influential in negotiating between the government and, of course, the different opposition factions within that country, to ensure they don't slide into a much more precarious or serious situation that might pose an existential threat to not just the security of Togo, but to Ghana as well.
Exactly. So for between 2005 and now, we are counting exactly 15 years. So it's been 15 years since Mr. Faure Gnassingbé has been in power. But really, what is the provision made by the Togolese constitution in terms of tenure and the rest of them?
Exactly. There are a lot of leaders who enjoy the power, and living becomes a bit of a problem, because in the past it was agreed in principle that he's supposed to leave, but when it was getting to that time, I've forgotten the constitutional provisions, but I used to have it. He decided to change, the provisions to have another term. And a lot of other leaders, like the Guinean leader Alpha Conde is doing that. The Ugandan leader Yoweri Museveni, that has also culminated into protests with even the arrest of Bobby Wine, etc. So it's really a major sticking point so far as politics, so far as security is concerned in Africa. And I think it is high time ECOWAS took action on that to ensure that even though there's a non-aggression pact where countries are not supposed to interfere in other countries' affairs, but the problem is your security concern would invariably also ultimately become my security concern.
And it's interesting you're talking about our neighbors, because La Côte d'Ivoire is also just next door, and there appears to be a similar problem in La Côte d'Ivoire. When Mr. Alassane Ouattara took over from Laurent Gbagbo, there was a constitution at the time. He was supposed to have ruled for 2 terms. Obviously, he's gone beyond that.
And they've approved for him to go for another term. And that is not all. They have disqualified the main challengers. The former rebel leader, Julem Soro, and also Laurent Gbagbo. They are not allowed to contest whatsoever. You know why? Because they say they are ex-convicts. Because in the past, Julem Soro was sentenced to 20 years for what they claim to be embezzlement. Remember recently there was an issue of Julem Soro not allowed to land in Côte d'Ivoire, then his plane was rerouted to Ghana.
Yes.
And there was talk about, why didn't the president do it? And I told them, if you were the president, you would not allow him to disembark, because there are direct diplomatic implications. What are you trying to do? Take a side with the opposition? No, that would strain our relations with Ivory Coast. So usually, we talk based on our emotions without really looking at the implications. But that has really been a problem. However, those allowed to contest now, the biggest challenger is Konan Bedi, who is former President Laurent Gbagbo's prime minister. Okay, but I understand there are some backdoor diplomatic channels between Gbagbo through other West African leaders with the president, Alassane Ouattara, for Gbagbo not to interfere in the electoral process, which I think is not really possible.
When Mr. Alassane Ouattara arrives, we'll spend some time talking about him and his country and the way the country has been run and under him as well. And before we return to issues happening within Mali itself, let's look at the Gambia, one of the West African countries that in the past went through a similar situation. And you recall how then President Yahya Jammeh was ousted, replaced by President Amadou Barrow. But since then, he appears to have been having challenges himself, Amadou Barrow, I believe.
Exactly, because he promised the people that he's going to run for just a term. They say power speaks. So he's really enjoyed the power, and he seems not wanting to go. And that has also ruffled some feathers in Gambian society. As a matter of fact, there's been some protests lately with some people comparing him to former President Yahya Jammeh. So, it's really been a problem, because the messiahs in the end become the detractors. Like it is happening with President Alpha Conde of Guinea. He's the first president to be democratically elected since the country gained independence in 1958. So it was welcome. Everybody is happy. Now he's going for another term, even though he's 82 years old. So these are issues that is really worth looking to. In as much
so he's been ruling for how long? For almost 50 years now.
Alpha Conde. He's ruled for about 20 years. But he wants to go for another term, which I think has been approved already, and that is also creating a lot of buzz in that country.
Maybe we have to spend some time also analyzing the factors that lead to many African leaders wanting to extend their stay. That's not the first time. I remember some time ago when the former president of Senegal, who was expected to leave at a point, Wade himself tried to change the constitution to suit him. back here in Ghana, we haven't had that kind of situation. But I recall President Kufuor did say that a 4-year term is really not enough. And at the time, he had agreed to leave, but he made a proposal that if the constitution could extend the tenure of presidents to 5 years. So maybe we have to spend some time analyzing what it is that leads these leaders who want to extend their stay in power. Do we know?
Well, it's a lot. It's a myriad of issues. And I remember when I was studying conflict analysis and mediation at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center, it was one of the topics that we discussed. And I personally wrote a number of papers on that. I think one of it is got to do with bad governance. You know, obviously bad governance leads to corruption. And you know, with the level of abuse of power, with the level of abuse of resources by those in charge, it becomes extremely difficult for them to leave. Partly, one, because they don't want to go and leave all the largesse, and secondly, because they are running away from accountability. Because a lot of them are tempted to believe that because of this and that I did, they become so paranoid. When we leave, definitely there could be, you know, an investigation of some sort into our dealings, and that could end us in jail. Okay. And secondly, I think,
sorry, but the constitutions of these countries not provide immunity to presidents even when they're out of power from, you know, prosecution and the rest of it?
There's always a way governments find to change constitutional provisions, no matter how entrenched they are. You know, don't compare them to Ghana. Ghana, our democracy has come of age. Our democracy is so very well entrenched to the extent that it would almost be impossible to engage in certain activities that would be inimical to the democratic process. But in some countries, it is not as entrenched as we have it here. We don't have active participation in politics in other countries like we have it here. Trust me, Moomen, you go to Makola and you see the women, you know, analyzing political issues, and you are surprised. You know, Ghanaians are so political. Recently in Tema, I was attending a wedding reception, and at a point they started playing political songs. Na 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 is a winner. Trust me, you should see the number of women who rushed to the dance floor, which was until then quiet. It would amaze you. So that shows how political we are in Ghana. All right, and in other countries it is not always the same, and leaders are able to get away with some of these, you know, changes that breed insecurity. And another issue is got to do with the type of pacts, you know, regional bodies go into, because most of it is got to do with non-aggression, non-interference in the internal affairs of the country. But now, because of new issues, new actors, new strategies, new weapons, security is changing by the day. Like I indicated, it is becoming transnationalized. I think it is important that they change those provisions, because if you feel like in the UN, if the Security Council feels that there's any danger to international peace and security, they have the right to intervene, like it happened prior to the toppling of Gaddafi in Libya. So if we also feel that the activities of a government in any country within Africa or within the West African subcontinent is inimical to the peace and security of the sub-region, we have to take it up and deal with it as it should. elections between the major political parties were the Orange Democratic Movement and the People's National Union. Okay, things degenerated into violence, especially taking into cognizance the fact that they had some ethnic divisions between the Kikiyus, the Kalenjins, and the Luos. A lot of people within the Kenyan society felt most of the resources was in the hands of the Kikiyus. That is why I get frightened when we do tribal politics in Ghana. Because it is always a recipe for disaster. It creates frustration, it creates disenchantment, it creates prejudice against a particular ethnic group. So it is something that I don't wish we go towards at all. Coming from, test cases that we can refer to, especially with respect to Kenya. So things got so bad in Kenya. A lot of people were dying after the election. At a point, it got so bad that then U.S. President George Bush had to send Condoleezza Rice, his Secretary of State, to Nairobi. Okay, so when she got to Nairobi airport, she gave it will not be business as usual speech. That means we are not going to accept this. Something must be done about that. Then at that same period, we had former President George Bush calling on President Kufuor, who was then the AU chair, to intervene, in what is going on. So immediately, the AU chair, then former President, President Kufuor, called on Kofi Annan of blessed memory to go and engage in what we call shuttle diplomacy in Kenya.
Shuttle diplomacy.
Yes. That is, we are the two belligerent forces. I'll come to you. What are your demands? So what can we do for you? Then the person would come to me. Okay, what are your demands? What do you want us to do? So let us look at reconciliation. Let us look at meeting each other halfway. So it usually involves moving from point A to point B and from point B to point A. And it was extremely difficult because I spoke with a number of persons who were involved in that process. And trust me, the coordinator, I've forgotten his name, said at a point things got so bad that one lead on the side of I think the ruling government then almost like in anger got out of her chair to hold another person by the shirt. So things were really very bad in that country. And, in the end, peace was restored. But the peace was only able to be restored through the formation of a unity government. Usually, unity governments are not meant to last forever. There is some kind of a transition, to, a better rule or a better system of governance. So, like I indicated, times they were in desperate times, and that action had to be taken. I don't advise it because it gives some heads of states, or despotic leaders the opportunity to continue their stay in office through unity governments. And like it also happened in Zimbabwe, the poet what's his name? The former opposition leader that is in Kenya. I've forgotten the that is the former opposition leader who died later in Zimbabwe. They also formed a unity government. He was the prime minister, and it also didn't stand the test of time. So I think going forward, it is something we really have to look at. But when times are so desperate, we have no option but to opt for it in the interim. So going forward, at least we can now have a substantive government that is elected by the people.
One of the presidents whose arrival we're expecting this morning is the president of Burkina Faso. President of Burkina Faso is Roch Marc.
Christian Kabore.
Yes, he will. And so on.
I've been there.
I've been to Ouagadougou, I've been to Bogo Dioulasso. I've studied extensively about the history of that country. There's a lot of talk about Blaise Compaoré betraying his very friend. He went to, the military academy together, and in the name of politics betrayed him. And later, Sankara, exactly. And later, he was also overthrown through a popular uprising. And now we have a new leader in Burkina Faso. But one of the major issues coming up from Burkina Faso is the issue of so-called Islamist jihadist insurgents who are actually taking advantage of the lack of government services. In many parts of Burkina Faso, they take over, impose taxes, and are able to provide certain services, including jobs, including social services like sanitation, water, electricity, to these areas that the central government is not able to.
There's a similar situation in Somalia, where Al-Shabaab also has introduced some tax system. Tax people take money and actually provide
services,
them with services and amenities and so on. But this definitely cannot be a good sign for Africa and the sub-region in particular, because you have stated that what happens in one country obviously has effects on the other country. So I'm looking at our neighbors, so Burkina Faso, not too far away up there, Mali. There are these problems, and we consistently have people moving into Ghana from these parts as well. What are the ramifications? What could be the repercussions for us back here in Ghana?
Well, terrorism especially has gone beyond being a Western thing. It is now a global menace. Just recently, I was reading a U.S. Department of State travel advisory to its citizens coming to Ghana. It talks about the fact that crime is on the increase, and they were advised to stay away from certain areas of Ghana. And the report also suggested that there's no real threat of terrorism in Ghana. However, the activities of some Al-Qaeda and ISIS affiliates in Burkina Faso is posing a security threat to the country, and people would have to be aware of that. You see, the thing is, because of our porous borders, we have groups that are able to sneak to a particular country and establish what we call sleeper cells. And they are able to maintain those sleeper cells for a very long time until you step on their toes. Then they call on those sleeper cells to stage attacks against you. So I have always thought about this terrorism issue, especially because of what is happening in Nigeria with respect to Boko Haram, and in Mali, in Burkina Faso, and of course in Ivory Coast. So we are very much, under threat. That is why we have put together a national, counter-terrorism unit that I must say has been doing a lot of work in recent times. I have been to a number of consultative meetings. At the point we went to the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping and Training Center, and there was talk about going beyond the militarization of the fight against terror, because we have a lot of military groups within West Africa, especially like Operation Barkhane, that is fighting terrorism in West Africa, and of course the Sahel region, with support from Western countries, including France. But we should look at the hybridity of fighting terrorism. Hybridity means going beyond just the military means and going into the socio-economic and geopolitical issues. So if it means giving jobs to the youth, if it means extending social services to certain areas with strong backing of terrorist groups, I mean, that can help to a very large extent, because most of these terrorist groups are able to thrive because the locals support them.
And the flight that just landed is from Niger, and that means the Nigerian President Mahamudu Yusufu, it's here. The Nigerian president has special relations with Ghana as well. Recall that at the 62nd independence anniversary, he was a special guest of honor here in Tamale. That was the first time the independence celebration at the national level had been taken away from the capital to another location, and Tamale was he was the guest of honor on that occasion, arriving shortly.
Yes, he is the immediate past chair of the ECOWAS heads of states, authorities of head of states and governments. He handed over to President Nana Akufo-Addo. I mean, Niger and Ghana has always, the two countries have always maintained a cordial diplomatic relations. Indeed, it would interest you to know that a lot of these abokis we have in town are from Niger. You know, so it's a country that we have a lot of links with. And so I think it's coming would be very important for what is going on, because Niger has also played a very crucial role so far as the war against terrorism is concerned. There are instances where, you know, there's cross-border, you know, attacks on Nigerian soil from other countries, and they have also, contributed troops to the different operations aimed at curbing the terrorist threats in the region. So Niger is being a partner so far as security is concerned in the West African sub-region.
And it's interesting, we've been talking about countries that have been in some bit of turmoil politically. Niger hasn't been immune to some of these problems as well. President Yusufu himself has had some challenges back in Niger, hasn't he?
Yes, he has. And it's particularly got to do with a lot of people in Niger not feeling safe. There are economic issues in Niger, I must say. Some of these countries, when you compare them with Ghana, you realize that we are better off, even though we have some challenges as well as a country. So in the past, there were some protests against this rule because of issues that relate to economy, because of security issues. I must say, France has been extremely helpful so far as contributing troops in the form of training for Nigerian soldiers, the provision of logistics, the provisions of surveillance facilities so far as fighting, you know, terrorism is concerned. And they've also cooperated, I must say, with a lot of countries within that region, including Mauritania, Chad, Nigeria, Mali, to fight the terrorism scourge in that region. So, like I said, Niger is a partner, you know, in security within the West African sub-region, and I can only hope that that relationship is fostered going forward. Every country has its own internal issues, even in Ghana. You know, sometimes I have foreigners coming to Ghana and telling me, you know, usually we go for conferences, we go for courses, and some time ago I was attending a course at Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping and Training Center, and we're only 2 Ghanaians. The rest were foreigners, and they all went like, Ghana, you are lucky. Ghana, we are happy to be in Ghana, and we don't mind relocating to Ghana. But a lot of us still complain because we want more. Americans complain, British complain. So you can never be content. But I'm hoping it doesn't degenerate into any insecurity.
And if you've just joined us, you are watching us live on GTV, also live on GBC News. Coverage of the arrival of the heads of states of member countries of ECOWAS, who are coming to Accra for the extraordinary summit of heads of states to address the problem, the political problems in Mali. With me in the commentary position doing the analysis is Mr. Adib Saani, an international relations expert who is also a security expert as well. Adib, we are grateful that you have been with us here since morning. And we just witnessed the arrival of the president of Niger. His plane just landed, and in a few minutes he will be stepping out of the aircraft, and the necessary protocols will be done. The national anthems of Niger and that of Ghana will be played, and he'll proceed to make his way to the meeting grounds for this very important summit, which is at the Presidential Lodge right here in Ghana at Peduase. So, President, yes.
Excuse me, I'm particularly excited that these leaders have taken time off their very busy schedules. Some of them have issues within their countries. There's a great deal of frustration, disenchantment amongst their populations, yet they are committed to dealing with the situation in Mali. So this summit is extremely very important, and I must say, Abdul, Ghana is playing a very influential role so far as maintaining security in West Africa is concerned. In fact, we are part of the two major powers within the West African sub-region, Nigeria and Ghana. So even if you look at the ECOWAS Parliament, Nigeria has the largest number of members and is followed by Ghana. So that shows the intrinsic value of Ghana when it comes to maintaining security within the West African subcontinent. And for these leaders to be part of this summit is something I very much welcome, and I pray that they are able to, reach a consensus with the military junta in Mali on the way forward. Because in the end, the people power really matters, and the power would have to be within the quickest time be handed over to a civilian authority that is elected by the people. But in the interim, definitely there will be the need for a transition, and that transition currently is being proposed by the military to take 18 months, even though when it all started they said 2 years, but there's been opposition to it, especially by those who led the protest at the height of the political upheaval earlier this year. And of course, heads of states of West Africa, they claim that no, 2 years is too much. They reduced it to 18 months, and now what we want and what is going to be negotiated for, I think, is 1 year. However, it doesn't end there. They want a civilian authority to be in charge of the transition. However, the military is insisting that they get a military person to be in charge. As a result, they are putting together a body that would elect. And obviously, if the military is putting together a body to elect a leader, they will elect one of their own. So it's another issue that is being looked at here, and like has been explained by you, there's the need for a national consensus. Everybody would have to be part of the political process, and so it doesn't just have to be the opposition and the military taking part in that process, but there are of course followers of former President Abubakar Keita, and so all of them would have to be included in that process going forward. But I mean, considering the level of respect many of these countries, including Mali, has for Ghana, I'm hoping that President Nana Akufo-Addo, who has been a foreign affairs minister at the point, so I'm sure he has negotiation skills. He understands some of these protocols. I'm hoping that he will be able to reach a consensus, and peace would come back. I mean, peace would return to Mali in the very best interest of not just Mali, but West Africa and even Europe. That is why the Europeans are taking very keen interest in what is going on. Remember, there's already an agreement between ECOWAS and the EU, the EU-ECOWAS Pact. ECOWAS has a population of nearly 500 million people. Our GDP, PPP, to be specific, is about $1.5 trillion. That is 2015 information. Is what I'm giving you. So together we are able to negotiate. Together we have a say within the international space. That is why integration, free markets, is always extremely important. I remember at my when I was reading my second master's in security and international politics at the Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College, it is something I particularly took keen interest in, and I wrote a lot on it. The need for integration, because it is the way forward. Right. Partnerships is extremely key.
National anthem.
skipper. From Zuksama, pump like drop.
So that was the arrival of President of Niger, Isufu Mahamudu. So he is one of those who has arrived for the extraordinary summit organized by ECOWAS to attend to issues in Mali at the moment. Mahamudu Isufu is a Nigerian politician, and he has been president of that country since 7th April 2011. He was Prime Minister of Niger from 1993 to 1994, and he was the President of the National Assembly from 1995 to 1996, and he has been a candidate in each presidential election since 1993. He led the Nigerian Party for Democracy and Socialism, a social democratic party, from its foundation in 1990 until his election as president in 2011 during the presidency of Mamadou Tanja, who ruled that country from 1999 until 2010. Isufu was the main opposition leader, and so what it means is that he has been in politics for a very long time,
exactly.
and even at the highest level for a very long time.
Exactly. I mean, so that shows his immense experience so far as politics is concerned in that country. So I'm pretty sure that he would also have a lot of experience in diplomacy, and his coming couldn't have been any more important. So I think it is welcoming that we have all of these leaders coming in. But like I indicated earlier, we're hoping that we're hoping that we'll be able to reach a solution to the impasse in the country.
Yes.
We will be expecting some other heads of states as well. Alpha Conte is yet to arrive. But when I looked at
Alpha Conde,
yes,
he arrived last night.
Okay, he arrived last night, exactly.
He's already here. Okay. Yes, so we will.
And I think we're also expecting the Nigerian vice president.
Nigerian vice president?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
I saw it somewhere.
Right. So we'll see who comes from Nigeria. The information we got earlier was that the president himself, Hayi, who represents Nigeria.
Okay.
But, when the arrival is done, we will be able to confirm who is here. But already we've seen the arrival of Nyashimbe of Togo, and we just witnessed the arrival of the Nigerian president, Mamadou Isufu. They are all here to help resolve the current problems in Mali.
And it will be welcoming to have the Nigerian president represent, because Nigeria is the main power broker, not just in West Africa, but even in Africa, because it has the largest economy. So obviously when the US sneezes, the whole West African subcontinent would catch cold. As a result, whatever propositions it is that the Nigerians will be very much in favor of, and especially if it is also very consistent with that of Ghana, the military might be forced to accept it. In the midst of all this, I'm sure there's backdoor diplomatic talks between ECOWAS and the French, because the French is very much interested in what is going on, apart from the fact that this would lead to a reduction in the level of or in the numbers of illegal immigrants crossing the Mediterranean into Europe, but they also have a lot of resources, a lot of interest to protect in that country, because a lot of these terror groups begin there, and in the end they find their way into Western Europe, and that is where you have them able to stage terror attacks in Belgium, in London, and other countries. So considering how globalized terrorism has become, every Western country would be very much interested in what is going on in Mali, even though it looks extremely remote and perhaps will not really have any bearing on their security in those countries. But it is very important. So it is very gratifying to know that we would have the Nigerian president coming in. Of course, that would add some level of vigor and power to whatever position the ECOWAS has to propose to the military in Mali.
It will be interesting to find out who is in Ghana's presidential aircraft, making its way to the arrival point where the short ceremony to welcome heads of state of West African countries, ECOWAS member countries who are here. It will be interesting to know who has come on this flight. We'll confirm that to you shortly. What is it that is so special about the Sahel region that for so many years, that region in particular has been in some turmoil? What's the special thing there?
Well, let us first of all put into perspective the geographical area of the Sahel region. It's so vast. And interestingly, the northern Mali is almost part of the Sahel region. But I'll tell you what, 90% of Malians live in the south. So that shows how sparsely populated that area is. And it's so vast. It spans Senegal all the way through Mauritania, Chad, to even Eritrea. So as a result, there are a number of groups operating in that area. Most of them get inspiration from the turmoil in North Africa. There are a lot of resistant movements. There are a lot of Al-Qaeda and ISIS affiliated groups in that area. And all of them are posing an existential security threat to sub-Saharan Africa, because in the past their focus was much more on those countries within that enclave. But they've had leaders like Mukhtar, groups such as Al-Murabitum, and a whole lot of them calling on their followers to stage attacks against Western targets and their collaborators in sub-Saharan Africa. So immediately a terrorist says that they are going to stage attacks against Western targets and their collaborators. That obviously means if you have anything to do with the West, whether it is trade and commerce or security, you are a collaborator. That means also invariably that we are all not immune from terrorist attacks, because before they attack, there are three things that is taken into consideration: the means, the opportunity, and of course the motive. All right, these terror groups have would obviously have the motive to come after us, because they will say, "Oh, you are collaborating with the West." And remember when the issue of the Defense Cooperation Agreement came, I said, that might put Ghana, in the limelight, of these, terror groups who might think that we are cooperating with the U.S. in fighting terrorism. They have the means, because there's terrorist financing. They are able to wire money through illegal means, money laundering. They have the weapons from other parts of the continent and even from beyond the continent. They could also have the opportunity, because we have issues with our security. We have issues with border security. Okay, so whatever is happening in the Sahel region, if you sit in Ghana and think it has nothing to do with you, then you must be, so ill-informed. Okay, so that is why this is extremely very important to the ordinary Ghanaian, and that is why His Excellency, the President now, the Chair of the Authority of Heads and States of Government of the ECOWAS, is giving so much priority to what is going on in Mali. So in the end, it engenders peace not only within Mali, but the greater West African and Sahel regions altogether.
And if you just join us once again, this is GBC stopping the States of America who are arriving in Ghana to take part in that extraordinary summit. The summit aimed at finding a permanent solution to the impasse in Mali. Mali has been in some form of turmoil since April of this year, when a section of that country's population went on protest across the country demanding the resignation of the President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. Indeed, he is no longer in charge in that country at the moment, but the proposals for a civilian government to be formed, but the military insists in that country that the military will be in charge for a transitional period of 2 years, after which they will restore civilian rule in that country. These are some of the issues that is at hand, and the ECOWAS heads of state are here to try and find a solution to that. Already also in the country is the special representative of the Secretary General of the UN to Mali. He arrived in the country yesterday, and he will be joining the heads of state as they try to find a solution to the problem in Mali as well. With me, Adib Saani. Mr. Adib Saani is a security analyst. He's also an international relations expert. So, to the extent that sovereign countries and what happens within those countries cannot be determined by other countries, to what, how far can any conversation here travel within Mali?
You know, already ECOWAS has imposed sanctions on Mali, and it is really crippling their economy that is already crippled in the first place. So it is extremely difficult. It will be extremely difficult for any government to rule with those sanctions in place. And you know, when ECOWAS places sanctions, in the end, AU would place sanctions, and other partners, including the EU and other individual European countries and perhaps the US, would also impose sanctions. And you know, no country can live like an island. No country can be self-reliant. There's always the need for
elite class or the people at the grassroots, the ordinary citizens of those countries?
It is always based on a particular premise, because of course, I mean, like what is happening with the sanctions in Iran, it was the Iranian people who were suffering. You know, as for the politicians, they would always live in luxury. However, the premise is, if there's a sanction on a country, things will be so bad that it will make the government very unpopular, and that is every government's nightmare. So you'll be forced to give in to some of these demands. So I think it is a good thing. A clear message would have to be sent out to the authorities in Mali that you cannot live like an island. I mean, would slap you with even far greater sanctions if you don't, you know, see it into the will of the people. And I think that is a very good thing to happen. Every country obviously has international partners, and who also have a very important role so far as running of the country is concerned. One of Mali's greatest influences is France, and France's role, or France's propositions with respect to what is going on, is very consistent with that of ECOWAS. And like I earlier on stated, whatever it is they are discussing might have also been discussed with France. That largely remains very much influential in many of its colonies. Okay, so these sanctions really bite hard, and they help in getting, you know, these militaries to give in to the demands of the people.
Within the ECOWAS sub-region in particular, you find more than at least 2 languages. So there is English, there's French, and sometimes
there's Portuguese. Yes, well. Exactly.
So when they meet at summits such as these, especially under emergency situations like this, and there would have to be interpreters.
Yeah.
Does that not affect the level of communication and the impact of messages that are being sent? Because something will by all means be lost through translation and so on. How do they interact?
We have experts that are usually tasked with the translation, people who have been tried and tested with a lot of industrial expertise and experience in whatever they do. I do know that sometimes language is quite dynamic, and it goes beyond the way things are spelled, even the way they are pronounced. And I'll give you an example. In Chi, when you say Papano, that man.
Yes.
But if you say Papano,
Yes.
it's the same spelling. Papano and Papano.
Yeah.
They mean two different things altogether. You get me? So in other languages it can be the same, but I doubt that it would have any direct, bearing or negating bearing on the negotiations that will be happening here. I mean, everybody is clear about the rules of engagement. Everybody is clear about the stance taken by ECOWAS, the opposition in Mali, and the military. So it is about, reconciling the differing opinions. And I speak as a conflict and mediation specialist. As a matter of fact, I did a course at Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping and Training Center. That automatically makes me a member of the AU mediators role. So I do understand some of the dynamics that goes into some of these diplomacies that happen. I remember one of the courses I took was in negotiation, and it was with specific reference to a Western journalist who was kidnapped in Colombia. And it all started with the kidnappers asking for $2 million. And the negotiators told the family, what do you think you can offer? The family was like $1.5 million. And they said, no, in negotiation, you don't go that way. You start with $50,000. And the family was like, no, you want our relative killed? And they said, no, that is negotiation. When he knows he's mentioned a big amount, you should also mention a very small amount. And in the end, you know what separated them? About $200,000. Wow. So, there's an art of diplomacy. And in considering all of this that is happening, it should go beyond just the superficial information we are very much accustomed to. Oh, there was protest and a government has been overthrown and the military is in charge. There are issues that borders on human security in Malian society. Yeah. So in as much as we're concerned about, bringing an end to the impasse, we should be also concerned about bridging the inequalities in that country. We should be also concerned about development of the people and improving their lot, because that is what contributes to sustainable peace. If not, what we're doing here would not, last beyond a year.
Right. We've seen the arrival of many more of the dignitaries who are expected to be at the summit later today. Already we've seen Paul Nyashungbe arrive. We've seen the arrival of the president of Niger, Mahamadou Issoufou, and shortly we will confirm who is here as well. But there will be a brief ceremony. The national anthems will be played here to signify the arrival of these heads of state. This is the president of Burkina Faso. the national anthems of Ghana and Burkina Faso. We just listened to that a short while ago to welcome the Burkinabe President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore, who has been in power since 2015 as well. He took over after a similar situation.
Yes, exactly. Popular uprising against the rule of President Blaise Compaoré, who also has been in charge of Burkina Faso for some time now. However, the major issue right now in Burkina Faso, aside the economic issues and other underlying social issues, is the issue of security. Look, Burkina Faso, at a point, the U.S. head of military, Africa Command, said, General Marcus Hicks, that we seem to be losing the fight against terrorism in Burkina Faso, and the U.S. must take an active role, play a very active role so far as ensuring security in Burkina Faso is concerned, because whatever is happening there has the potential of spiraling out of control and into other neighboring countries, especially Ghana, which they claim has been a very peaceful country. I mean, for some time now. We've never had a civil war before. We've never been attacked by any terrorist group. So far, we've not really been very much threatened. However, there's a cause for concern. So Burkina Faso is really posing a bit of a problem to the whole West African sub-region. Terrorist attacks in Burkina Faso has become more like a daily occurrence. And like I indicated, most of these groups, the so-called Islamic jihadi groups, are taking advantage of the lack of social services offered by the government in those areas. They are able to take over, they are able to impose taxes, and they are most importantly able to provide certain services that the government is not able to. So in the end, what do we see? We see the community siding with the groups, giving them cover, protecting them, and even getting more recruits into these groups. So until we are able to look at the war against terrorism from the hybrid perspective, from the partnership perspective, I'm sure it would be a long way ahead. Okay, so I think it is very, very critical that going forward we enhance Operation Bakan and other operations that is currently ongoing between a number of countries within that region, and of course their French counterparts, in dealing with the spirit of terrorism. Let us make a conscious attempt to develop, to invest in human security, which I must say is the most important aspect of security. For years on end, our focus has always been on the militarized nature of fighting terrorism. Use drones, go and bomb terror targets, kill them as much as they can. You know how long America has been killing so-called terrorists in Afghanistan? They've been in the longest war so far. After the Korean War, which didn't last for so long, and even after the Vietnam War, which lasted between 1965 and 75. This is by far the longest war America... Exactly, since the invasion of Afghanistan to topple the Taliban after the 9/11 attacks. They have been bombing. Okay, using fighter jets, using stealth bombers, etc., to kill terrorists. But the terrorists keep coming in their numbers.
Right
so
now, the president of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, was recently re-elected after a hotly contested election. That election had to be postponed at a point in time to the degree of many of the opposition at the time. What actually led to the postponement of that election? Because it did spark up a lot of suspicions at the time.
Of course, it was another very serious issue we had to contend with, because if Nigeria, like I said, sneezes, the whole West African subcontinent would catch cold. Nigeria is a big brother. Whatever happens in that country would have dire consequences on the whole West African sub-region, and the postponement was met with a lot of suspicion. But they gave their own, assessment of what was going on with respect to how prepared they were for the elections. But thankfully, the elections was able to come on without major hiccups. But like I always say, I mean, you cannot have 100% free and fair, credible elections. Nowhere in this world can you have that. Even in the US, they had their own issues, especially ethnic, politics playing a very crucial role in what was going on. But Nigeria is a very unique case, considering their history. In the late 1970s, when there was a coup by 5 majors, resulting in the Igbos who are in the southeastern part taking power, and it resulted in the killings of some very high-profile persons in the country, which later resulted in the Biafran War. Indeed, a lot of people were killed and a lot more displaced in the millions. They are still reeling from the effects of that war. I have followed it keenly. I've read a lot about it. And at the height of the war, after the Nigerian authorities took over, the Nigerian government, which was led by Northerners, took over the Kachina market, which I understand was the biggest market in West Africa. There was an ambush of Nigerian soldiers in a town called Abagana, resulting in the deaths of well over 2,000 Nigerian troops. That was inflicted on them by the Biafran army. So it was a very despicable, dastardly, war that divided the country and is still dividing the country, because a lot of ethnic politicking is happening in that country. But that notwithstanding, it has largely been able to be controlled. And so far, I think, even though they have their challenges, because Nigeria is competing with India with the highest number of people living below the poverty line. There was this information points to the fact that there are well over 80 million Nigerians living on less than $1 a day. And considering the fact that they are competing with India shows how dire the situation is like in Nigeria, because India has, a lot more people than Nigeria, with a population of about 1.2, 1.3 billion people. So if they are competing with Nigeria over the largest number of people living below the poverty line, should tell you how serious the issue is in Nigeria, considering the enormous, natural resources they have, the petrochemical industry, and all that. So that points to a number of issues, including corruption in that country, which needs to be addressed.
From the Nigerian High Commission, as well as from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here in Ghana, by the aircraft to welcome President Muhammadu Buhari to Ghana to attend the extraordinary ECOWAS Summit. And there he will step out shortly from the aircraft. President Buhari, running his second term in Nigeria. All right, so it's actually the Vice President of Nigeria, Osibanjo, who is representing the country, I believe, here.
Let's confirm, though.
Who confirmed that?
We still have some dignitaries coming down from the plane, and when we confirm, we'll let you know.
Yes, definitely it's the Vice President of Nigeria who has arrived on behalf of his country. Nigeria, and it's significant that Nigeria is taking part in this summit as well, because when the Yahya Jammeh regime refused to hand over power, Nigeria played a significant role in restoring sanity to that country.
Nigeria has always played a very crucial role. I remember when Tijani Ahmed Kaba was overthrown in Sierra Leone, the Nigerian forces under the ECOWAS
national
played
anthem
a very important role.
was the Nigerian Vice President representing President Muhammadu Buhari here at the extraordinary ECOWAS Summit to address the issue in Mali. Significant that Nigeria is playing a role in this one as well, because they have always been instrumental in restoring sanity to countries that have been turned upside down, as just as the situation in Mali. But Nigeria has its own internal problems to deal with. Quite apart from the economic issues you raised, Nigeria has had to deal with the insurgency of Boko Haram for many years. President Buhari promised ahead of the 2011 elections to deal completely with that. Has he been able to deal with
But some of us who have been following the security situation in Nigeria, we knew. I mean, it was just a campaign promise.
The elections in 2014, which
exactly. I mean, we knew it was just an election promise. I mean, there was absolutely no way Boko Haram could have been defeated without certain structural changes on the ground. And we still have the good old issues with respect to corruption within the military, with respect to lack of motivation on the part of military personnel, and also, most importantly, the source of the weapons and funding for these groups, which some have contended is coming from certain prominent people within Nigeria. I was on a course some time ago, and one of my colleagues is a Nigerian law professor, and I asked him, how come Nigeria, with the most powerful military in West Africa and one of the most powerful militaries in Africa, is not able to, just clear Boko Haram completely? And he said corruption. That is their major issue. And there's a similar issue, unfolding in Mali, where there are situations where the military, they desert. Some of them, just put down their weapons and go home because they feel what is due them is not paid them. They don't have the logistics. They don't have support from other important stakeholders like the politicians. So there's more morale. As a result, they are not able to deal with the insurgency effectively. Secondly, a lot of the communities, especially in the northeastern parts of Nigeria, very much are in bed with Boko Haram. They give them the shelter, they protect them, they cover up for them. Okay, so if they are able to make an attempt to restore some level of governmental control in the northeastern part of Nigeria, I'm sure they will be ending up, winning the hearts and minds of the people. But the unfortunate thing is, when this whole Boko Haram menace started, the way the Nigerian authorities handled it is what culminated into the whole Boko Haram thing that is posing a security threat to not just Nigeria, but the greater, West African sub-region. I remember Yusuf Mohammed, the founder of Boko Haram. He was just a preacher. They were not an armed movement. But at a point, Abdul, they were on a funeral, even though he had very strong views on Islam and all that, he was under the radar of the authorities. But they had a funeral, they were taking one of their own to the burial grounds. Then it became violent. Some members of Boko Haram were killed. Then immediately they also decided to take weapons. But the government still didn't handle it well. They sent troops to northern Nigeria to quash the insurgency. Unfortunately, many of these soldiers were not well trained. Many of them were not ethical enough, and they were actually murdering, engaging in extrajudicial killings in broad daylight, in front of police stations, in front of army barracks, in the full glare of the public. So it played to Boko Haram's advantage, which always had contended that, the Southerners are against us. They want to kill us. So immediately they deployed Southern soldiers to the northern part, and they engaged in those activities. We had Boko Haram getting a lot more recruits. You see, so from the onset, the way it was managed didn't help the situation. But now one of the biggest issues they are dealing with is the fact that they are operating from the Sambisi forest, which is extremely vast. So vast that they hit and they run. And in warfare, it's called asymmetrical warfare. It is not two states, actors meeting head on and slugging it out themselves, okay? But this is got with a state actor against a non-state actor. So it becomes extremely difficult, because that is what the Vietnamese used against the Americans, during the Vietnam War between 1965 and 75, when the Viet Cong, they hit and they ran into the forest, and they were digging tunnels. And you know, Vietnam was divided in between South and North Vietnam. South Vietnam, the capital was Saigon, which was controlled by the West. And North Vietnam were the communists, the Russians, the Chinese, and their capital is Hanoi. Okay, and now Saigon is now become Ho Chi Minh City since the defeat of the Westerners in that part of the country. So they hit and it becomes extremely difficult for you to control such a situation. And that is exactly what the Boko Haram insurgents are doing. They come in, take over a village, ransack it, kill as many people as they can, and run back into the Sambisi forest. And it's always very difficult to follow them because the people understand, the Boko Haram insurgents, they understand the forest than even the Nigerian military.
Admittedly also, post-2015, the reports of Boko Haram and its violence has got as much as pre-2015. Is that to suggest that at least there has been some progress made in the fight against the terrorist group?
I don't think there's been progress because at the point you become fatigued with reporting. You get me? I mean, a situation that is so generated so badly to the extent that terrorist attacks are almost a daily ritual. At the point, I mean, there will not be so much attention given to it. The situation is still bad, especially in the northeastern part of Nigeria. They are able to successfully stage attacks against civilian targets and even against, you know, military targets. When they come into a town, the military run out of the towns with their tails between their legs. I mean, so that shows how potent they've become over the period, and I think there's a lot more work the Nigerian authorities need to do so far as defeating the insurgency is concerned.
Focus on the next arriving head of state to attend the ECOWAS Summit, the extraordinary summit, which is being hosted here in Ghana. I remember Ghana President Akufo-Addo is the chairperson of the ECOWAS at the moment. He was elected a couple of weeks ago, and he has swung into action to bring finality to the problem currently in Mali, which is why all the leaders of West African countries, the ECOWAS member countries, are here to attend this summit. Arriving right now, the President of the Republic of Cote d'Ivoire, led by President Alassane Ouattara. He's been president since 2010. This is the 10th year of his rule, and he also took one power following similar circumstances in his country. But it doesn't appear that much has changed because it does appear he is back to the very things that he
spoke against. Exactly. You know, the Ivorian issue was quite dicey, and you remember that is what gave rise to the Diufiasem mantra, when a lot of Ghanaians were calling on then President Mills to intervene. But in the end, he said Diufiasem. That became very popular with Ghanaians and is still used to date. Prior to their elections in 2010, there were concerns about identity issues. And when we talk about identity issues in Ghana, people don't take me serious. They don't take us serious, but we know the effects it has on every country, especially from past experiences within Africa. Issues of identity, issues of people feeling they are not part of the process and they are left out. It becomes extremely serious. So they want them, prior to the elections in 2010, that we need to really give credence to issues of identity, because there was talk about the fact that Alassane Ouattara is not Ivorian enough. He is from Burkina Faso, and the Northerners were not Ivorians, they were from Burkina Faso and all that. There was issues of vigilantism in the country, and one notable vigilante group is called the Young Patriots. That was led by one young man, very vibrant firebrand, called Charles Blegude, also known as the Street General. And that is also playing out in Ghana, because there are still issues of vigilantism, there's still issues of identity, and all of this was not taken into consideration. Then they went into the election, and President Laurent Gbagbo said he would not leave. I remember the Independent Electoral Commission was going to announce the results, and one man just sprang from nowhere, and tore the result sheet into pieces. Then I knew there's trouble at hand. Unfortunately, ECOWAS didn't react in time. Okay, AU didn't react in time. We thought it's just one another, another political.
Again, France did react
by sending troops.
at that time.
Yes, but they were not an intervention. They were to create a buffer between the south and the west. But later, the French themselves realized that there was no commitment, especially on the part of the then government, because they started, attacking French interests in the country. Indeed, there was a lot of propaganda against the French in Ivory Coast, and of course, that didn't make the French happy. And in the end, they just left them to their fate, and that is what culminated into the civil war in 2011, which the current main opposition, Firebrand, who has been disqualified, Julep Soro also played a very crucial role, because he was the leader of the new forces that came from the north and fought their way all the way into Yamoussoukro and Abidjan, and even into the heartlands of the former president, and one of it being Yopougon, which is a stronghold of Laurent Gbagbo. So it was a very, nasty war. There were talks about rebels finding their way into Ghana from Ivory Coast, and I'm hoping that going forward, their political crisis will not degenerate into something similar to what happened in 2011. That is why it is extremely important that we react to some of these things in a very timely manner. But usually there's a tendency of us waiting at the regional and sub-regional level until things get out of hand before we start organizing extraordinary summits. So at the initial stages, like it is happening in Guinea, like it is happening in Ivory Coast, we give it the attention it deserves, so it doesn't degenerate into violence. And when we are able to deal with it, that way we are able to prevent,
President Alassane Ouattara has just arrived for the extraordinary summit. Of course, we go through the welcome protocols. First will be the national anthem of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire, and that will be followed by the national anthem of the Republic of Ghana. And he'll proceed to the venue for the summit, which is at the Presidential Lodge at Péduassé. The national anthem of Côte d'Ivoire and of Ghana. All those involved in the Vietnam War, the Biafra War, we are able to. Like me, I'm always
opposition figures.
All right, so the President of the Republic of Cote d'Ivoire, Mr. Alassane Ouattara, has just arrived in Accra and will soon make his way to the Presidential Lodge where the extraordinary summit will take place. Just landed. So Mr. Ouattara is one of those African leaders who has also asked for an extension through some constitutional amendments, just so he stays a while longer. What else do we know about him?
Well, he has succeeded, as a matter of fact, in getting the constitutional amendment in full force, because that amendment has succeeded in disqualifying his main challengers. The former leader of the new forces at the height of the conflict in 2011, Julian Soro, who is posing a bit of a nightmare to his rule, and of course also has succeeded in disqualifying former President Laurent Gbagbo from contesting, based on a very straightforward provision that if you are an ex-convict, if you've ever been found guilty of an offense, you are not qualified to stand. And we know full well that President Laurent Gbagbo was imprisoned at the International Criminal Court, even though now he's been released but on certain terms. Julian Soro was also at the point found guilty of embezzling state funds and was sentenced to 20 years in prison. And so these two main challengers cannot contest. However, the only potent force remaining is Konan Bedie, who is a former prime minister under then President Laurent Gbagbo. And this is really creating a bit of a problem, political problem in that country, and it's posing a security issue as well. But we're hoping that in the end there will be an amicable solution to what is going on.
Right, so this is where it all ends. Based on those who have arrived so far, President Nyasimbe has arrived, and so has this. Who are the others? Who are the President of Burkina Faso already? The President of Guinea has been here, and Nigeria, and they are all here to attend the extraordinary summit. Adib, so what do you expect to be the outcome, very briefly, before we wrap it all up?
I'm hoping that they use all the conflict, and mediation expertise they have. Of course, these are leaders who have served in high-profile capacities for a lot of years. They have a lot of industrial expertise so far as issues of this nature is concerned. I'm hoping that in the end they reach a consensus, they are able to meet each other halfway, and ultimately the will of the people should suffice on that occasion.
Right, and thank you very much. For those who are interested in following up on this story, GBC's cameras are currently situated at the Presidential Lodge, where we'll bring you up-to-date information as to what decisions are taken. Thank you very much, Adib Saani, international relations expert, and also a security analyst here with me. My name is Abdul, Moomen. Continue watching GBC channels as we bring you more on the extraordinary ECOWAS Summit. Have a very good morning.
Let's tell our stories, and let's watch and listen to our stories. There will be so much to tell. Ghana is a